My name is Dean. I'm a recovering alcoholic and addict, and this is Inside Addiction. I want to introduce our guest today for the show, President of the Board of Directors for Friends of Recovery New York, Laura Elliott Engel, and Field Director, Friends of Recovery New York, Sam Wiggins. Thank you both for joining us.
Hi, Dean.
Thank you.
Sam and Laura, whoever wants to go first, a little backstory about yourself up to the point of how you got involved with this great agency that's doing so much in supporting so many people that are affected by addiction.
I am a person in sustained recovery since 1975.
Wow.
My genetic predisposition to addiction happened when I was an adolescent, and the progression of my disease was very, very rapid. In 10 years, I was at end stage. Had been declared dead, actually, at one point, clinically dead. I was unemployable. I was bleeding literally from both ends of my body, and really ought not to be sitting here today. And I had a wonderful opportunity to go to an inpatient treatment in Rochester, New York, where I'd been raised. And I'd been away for about 8 years in Michigan trying to finish a bachelor's degree. And the addiction really just took all of that. So I came back home, and John L. Norris Clinic, which is an ATC, still is operating.
Yeah.
And I received what I needed, and engaged in 12-step community, and did all the kind of, I was maybe sick enough that I was just humble enough. So after a couple of years, I returned to school and got my BSW a few years later, finished a master's in theology, and married and have 2 children raised totally in recovery.
Wow. What a complete circle you did since the 70s.
1975.
Wow. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And is it safe to assume that you accomplished what you did one day at a time?
Absolutely.
Now, Sam, you've been a guest on the show in the past as well. For those people that haven't seen the show, kind of bring those people up to speed, a little bit of your background, a little bit of your story.
Yes. First, I'd like to just say thank you for having me here and having us here. I'm actually the product of a single-parented home in Brooklyn, New York. And the level of poverty that existed made me a great host for different experimental situations with drugs. I found myself dabbling to become a part of certain groups of individuals in my neighborhood, dabbling and experimenting with different drugs. The progression was one that moved at a rapid pace. Before I was out of high school, I was actually very great host for a number of different drugs and a number of different activities that came along with that particular package. I attempted to escape the realm that I lived in and the existence that I was so wholeheartedly participating in at one point, and went into the military. The military helped me to take another look, while at the same time allowed me to engage another form of drugs through alcohol and engaging in certain levels of illegal drug activity. Somewhere along the line, I abandoned everything I knew about normal life, quote unquote, and found myself engaging in criminal activities, found myself experiencing health issues. I got hurt in the military, and in an effort to deal with some of those issues, I delved deeper into the drug lifestyle, and the medicating of the pain that I was experiencing. That led to all different types of cocaine use, alcohol, and somewhere along the line, the God of my understanding assisted me in finding my way back into recovery. And I say back into because I had a moment in between where things got to the end, where I had paused, so to speak. Not stopped, but paused. Actually, I came to this particular area of Albany and found myself ready to do something different. And I need to say that the opportunities presented themselves as I began to progress in my recovery, and I stayed and became committed to this new way of life. Educational opportunities became available and became revealed to me. I now find myself possessing an associate's degree in science, a bachelor's degree in theology, and I'm now in pursuit of a master's degree in public policies, which allowed me to be seated here in this great company. So I thank you.
And how long ago did that whole transformation take place?
Well, I started getting high in 1969, and I was about 9 years old. I got clean in 1994, and I've been clean ever since.
Wow.
So, matter of fact, I just had the great occasion to celebrate 18 years, the 30th of August.
So let me ask you both. How do two people in sustained recovery find themselves in a position of seeing a need that wasn't currently being met in the birth of Friends of Recovery New York ultimately as a result of that? Or
We have in New York State some incredible community-based agencies and opportunities that really came from the very first woman who achieved sobriety in Alcoholics Anonymous, Marty Mann, with the National Council on Alcoholism. And New York has the largest network of councils, which came out of that whole commitment to educate the public about not only alcoholism, but also she was just absolutely a she-devil in terms of the passion and the being out there to say, this is a disease. This is not something for you to have to be ashamed about or to hide about, and it really was a thrust to try to fight the stigma. Well, not one group of people and not one entity can do it all.
sure.
And I think that's where Friends of Recovery New York really begins to thrust itself onto, if you will, the current scene. The State Office of Alcohol and Substance Abuse Services really was beginning to look at what recovery supports there were in New York State. Different from prevention education or more formal treatment opportunities, right? And that we all know, and just as Sam and I have shared very briefly, that there was something in place for us that allowed us to, I mean the three of us, to enter into another phase of our life called living in sustained recovery. And the challenge was, well, why is it that people just aren't finding that path? And we know that there are not enough treatment beds. We know that there are not enough detox beds. I mean, we can just go on and on about the deficits. And why should we always be moaning about what we don't have and figure out what we can do differently?
With what we do have.
With what we do have.
That's right.
So probably about 50 people from across all of New York State met in Colony in April of 2008. And our agenda was to actually create a statewide recovery addiction advocacy group. And in 3 months, from April until June 8th, we were formally incorporated, had our first board of directors. Many of those founding board members still are serving. Of course, I'm one of those. And we began the hard slog of beginning to try to connect to an entire state. I mean, pretty remarkable. Our board is geographically represented. Everyone I can say right now is in fact in addiction recovery, but we have had family members also impacted by addiction on our board. So our clear mission is family, friends, and allies need to be called to action, and very similar to what I was just saying in terms of that first challenge from, Marty Mann's very special to me because she's the first woman to recover, and so she was that hand and bridge that assisted people like me, who are the gender that I am,
right,
in a way that might not have otherwise happened.
So since 2008, tell me where Friends of Recovery New York has been, where they are, and then we'll talk a little bit about where you think they're going.
Okay. We very quickly tried to identify what actual responsibilities and actions we needed to take, and at some level really to be a force for change. And in the first 6 months, we were planning and held our first legislative advocacy day. We also had been invited in to be a partner with OASIS for the statewide recovery advocacy celebration that happens every September. That had been in place for, I think, at that point, 3 years in New York City, the walk across the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yeah, the recovery rally.
That was, because it was big and it drew from the Tri-County kind of area. We then had an opportunity to write a grant, which actually gave us some funds to try to hire. This was all volunteer hours.
Wow.
And all of us work full-time jobs. And all of us are all across the state. So the fact that we were pulling this stuff together speaks to our passion.
Absolutely.
Absolutely speaks to our passion. So, but having some revenue flow that you could count on really helped us step it up. And we were able to hire a part-time field director. Sam does have a predecessor who was just really instrumental in creating almost a, if you will, an office infrastructure.
Sure.
And what Sam has brought is the incredible ability to network and reach out and bring together resources that deep into the recovery community that's beyond what we would still talk about as the access points are the traditional treatment settings, right? Residential, outpatient. And that's important because